guys? Dr. Vic here. You're listening to Health by Dr. Vic podcast, and I'm excited to have you here. It's funny, I got a little kickback from this caffeine talk, and I thought, you know what? Let me do another edition on this to extend deeper of some elements of what you can do to help utilize the benefits of caffeine, but get more into a mindset. So, there's going to be a couple things we're going to dive into this episode. One's going to be the power of your mind, and then the second one's going to be other solutions, things that I use when it comes to consuming caffeine and those kind of things. Okay. So before we get in, if this is the first time you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe. If you're watching the video on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. So that way you don't miss ever an episode that we launch and all the great stuff that we have going on here at Health by Dr. Vic. Second, if you enjoy the podcast, please do me a favor, share a review. Preferably 5-star. Helps get the message out to all the information that we're sharing here. And if you enjoyed it truly, then go ahead and pay it forward by sharing it with just one person that you know that can benefit from this topic. So we talked a little bit about caffeine, and we talked about the aspects of caffeine, and in one of the recent last episodes. And I wanted to talk about today the element of understanding what happens when we see something in a different perspective. So for those who may not know, I am also a business and spiritual mindset coach. And so a lot of my work is mindset. And there's so much that I do with that: spiritual truths, universal laws, ancient wisdom, quantum physics, neuroscience, mindfulness tools, limiting beliefs, subconscious conditioning, decoding the matrix, and so much more. But in that process, one of the things is I talk a lot about mindset. Now, this is not new in the health world. We know something called the placebo effect versus the nocebo effect. Just to break those down, what those terms mean: placebo is something that you know that's going to benefit you in your mind. So they've done things where they give you a sugar pill versus the medication and you get better. They've even done these experiments where they had a patient, they marked the knee surgery they're going to have. They would cut them open, and they were saying they're part of a study, and they're going to do this new study of helping with this. So they go ahead and cut the knee open, and they just go and stitch it back up. That's it. The person would be passed out for it, and they would come back up, and they act like their knee was better, and they go walking around, and they have no pain. Everything feels like they had the surgery, right? The power of the mind. Nocebo is the opposite of that. That is thinking that what's bad is going to be bad for you, okay? So that can be like what we're going to talk a lot about today is thinking that in your mind, you believe that, coffee's bad for you. Man, I heard this doctor say it, and this doctor's talking about coffee. Wow, the coffee found that new study shows that it decreases blood circulation to the brain. Oh, I heard that coffee drains your adrenals. I heard that coffee is like a credit card, energy credit card. You're spending energy for what you don't have for tomorrow. You're pulling it to be good for today. I used to say some of these things, and I'm using coffee as an example because it's negative. We can go to chocolate, so many other things. But get this, right? So the nocebo is really looking at the negative. Now, who's right and who's wrong? If they've done studies on this, and I know two for sure, where they broke up 3 different groups of people. They did obviously one who's going to look at coffee, and they're going to be told how the benefits of coffee are. And that's all they're going to be told. The other group's going to be told the negatives of coffee. And here's the symptoms of what you'll feel with that, like mental fog, things like that, anxiety, faster heart rate, heart palpitations, those kind of stuff. And I think the other group was just nothing. They're not going to be told anything. And so what they did is data look at that, and they did the study on that, and they looked at what are some things that, the group that said all the good stuff, what was the outcomes going to be? And they looked at, they had it, and I don't remember how long the time frame was, but they all got the benefits of the good that came from coffee. Now, there's the other people who were told all the bad stuff. Guess what happened to them? Pretty simple. They all got the bad experience of coffee. They got the negative effects of it. Okay. And the other group pretty much didn't get anything at all. Some did, some didn't. It was very mixed, which was expected. They did this with chocolate. Okay. So chocolate was another example. Here's all the benefits of chocolate. Here's all the negatives of chocolate. They all of a sudden, who were told the benefits of chocolate? They got the benefits of chocolate. The ones who didn't get the benefits of chocolate were the ones that were told all the negatives. So what does it all mean? And why am I sharing all this? And is there any science to show that this is true? Well, yes to all. But the point I'm trying to share is how powerful your mind is. Right? So what does this come to? Well, we can take this to any aspect of your life, but let's just look at relationships. Relationships. Let's look at nutrition, right? Supplements. Well, this doc said this is great, man. I'm going to take it because, it was great. or you don't have that perspective, or you um, what diet to do, right? Oh, everyone says this diet's great. Oh, okay, fine, I'm going to do it. But what if you just chose a diet that works for you? Now, I don't agree with that 100% because there's new science out now that can help support these things. And I will bring these up in one of these podcasts coming up here to share some of what I do to determine what diet works for me, how I went through all these different things to get to this point, and so much more. But one of the principles I want to share with y'all is that when you understand the power of your mind, when you really believe in something, it's going to happen. It's that simple. You see, beliefs are the coding system. It's the codes to what create your life. It is whatever you believe is what you're going to experience. And what I mean by codes is like if you think of a computer codes have there's inputs and outputs, right? So there's something that comes in, there's a code, and then there's an output. So that's why I call them a code, because whatever your belief is, this is the input, then it's going to go through the code, and here's what you're going to experience. And so if I believe coffee is absolutely amazing for me, and I truly believe that deep down inside, then I can have coffee and it'll benefit me. Now, there's some people who are masters at this, and this is not health advice please don't take this as health advice by any ways. I'm just sharing the principles of how powerful your mind is. This takes work. You have to cultivate this. You can't just say, oh, well, coffee's great, and that's the end of it. There's some tips and tricks you can do, but you want to build up this, you want to practice with this to get this in more into your systems of what you do in your life. But is there any science that supports this stuff, right? Is there any science that can show that this is true? Well, quantum physics did a study called the observer effect. I use this study so much in my mindset coaching group business that I do, because it's just an awesome study that really determines and understands the power of the consciousness of the mind, where we put our focus, and what it creates for our life. So the observer effect was something as simple as just looking at, it's called a double slit study. And what it was is they made two holes, and they were shooting light through, and they wanted to see, does light show up in a wave format, or does it show up in a particle? And they had all their assumptions and all their, equations and calculations and everything, and they knew what it was going to become. Because remember, the quantum physics is uncovering the spookiness of this world, if you want to call it. It's the stuff that's so out there that we are just like, this goes against a lot of physics, or it's just something it's hard, it's just random, right? And some people say, well, quantum physics is not all about the random. And I'm like, well, it's not all about random per se, but it is about understanding more of our consciousness. So in the double slit study, they want to know wave format or particle. Which ones does light show up as? And here's the fascinating truth. Every time they would look at the sensors to see what was showing up, light would show up in a particle. They turn their head away and it'll turn back into a wave format. And then they go back and look and it'll turn back into a particle. And they kept doing this over and over and over and over and over and over again. And light would change based on the consciousness. Now they thought maybe there was an error. So they tested out in different ways to try to see that. And it kept showing up in the same results. So they're like, this is crazy how it's acting this way. And they're like, there's only one influence, and that's the person, the scientist, the researcher looking. And so what does that mean? Well, remember, as I said earlier, if you see it, if you believe this to be this way, that becomes your reality. Beliefs are very powerful. There's other things that play a role in that, but that's one of the big ones. And so if you believe this diet to help you, and you're 100% sold in it, you're going to condition the mind to look for all the positives, and you'll miss all the shortcomings. This is how powerful this stuff is. When you have the mind believing that something isn't right, you are going to see all aspects of this. So like, here's an example. I'll share a prime example of things. So I can talk about this in health. I can talk about this in finance. I can talk about this in relationships. I can talk about anything. This is all relates. This is universal wisdom here that I'm sharing with you. So cryptocurrencies, I invest in cryptocurrencies. I'm a big fan of them, and they've helped me tremendously. This is not financial advice, but here's what happens. I've learned over time, I made lots of mistakes to learn the way I learned. And one of the things is I'm what I call myself a trend trader, or I follow the trends, not the trends in the market, what people say and stuff. I just watch the charts. And if it goes one way, then I follow this. If it's the other way, then it shows this. I don't get into anything else. And it's been fascinating because I think crypto has been in a bear market for a little bit now. Officially got into a bear market, but there are so many people out there, that people I talk to, that are so stuck that, oh, but this is the bottom and we're going to blow right back up. And I'm like, we're in a bear market. Well, look how much it went up now. Oh, yeah, man, I'm 3x now where I was before when I purchased this thing. Doesn't matter. We're in a bear market. And why is there such a disconnect? Well, because they have a belief that it's going to go up, and they're going to look for every single thing to try to tell them that it is going up. Even if it is going down, they're going to still look for the things that are going up. And sometimes that could put you in a big mess. I know it's happened to me in the past. That's why I don't think that way anymore. The opposite is true too. But when we have a perception and we look at things and we have a belief about stuff, it is going to cloud our judgment and cloud our thinking. We're only going to try to look for whatever fits our belief, whatever fits that we see, and that's cognitive dissonance in its essence, because you're not being aware of all elements. You're just so stuck on what is showing for you. And this can be when it comes to diets. People do this with diets. People do this with, certain nutrition. People do this in relationships. People do this in every aspect, and they get hung into things, and they're not being mindful because the belief is clouding their judgment. That's how the mind works. So when it comes to you, I'm not saying to have a belief is going to cloud your judgment. You want to be open minded, but when you totally can shift your perspective and see things and say, this is, because there's a benefit and there's a negative. Okay, well, I'm going to look at the benefits and that's what I'm going to grab, right? And yeah, whatever else, this is what I'm going to get from it. You can totally shift your life, and that's the placebo effect. Okay. And so the key factor about your life is looking and saying, okay, I'm going to look at placebo when it comes to caffeine. Caffeine benefits me. Here's what caffeine does for me. You're going to actually define what it does for you, not what you feel and past experiences. No, what you want it to define for you. And you trust that process and you go forth. You see, I don't drink, I do drink coffee, but it's decaf. I don't like the caffeine in coffee does not do well for me. It just doesn't. I don't like the energy I get from it. And I don't mean energy like caffeine or that stuff. I mean, my energetic system just doesn't feel right. So I drink, and shifting gears here in our episode here is I drink two different types of beverages that have, they're teas, but they have caffeine in them. But the reason why I drink them also is the massive antioxidants that come from it. I care about those things. That's why I drink decaf coffee. I like the antioxidants that come from coffee. They're very beneficial, and I will like to get them as much as I can. So I choose those kind of options. So when it comes to my teas, I do a yerba mate, which comes from South America, and it's high in antioxidants. The beautiful thing about this caffeine is it comes with a lot of B vitamins, and it supports your adrenals, so it doesn't tax your adrenals when you have it. Caffeine can do that sometimes. Yerba mate does not do that. It's got a nice flavor to it. And I blend it in with I brew it every morning, and I'll have it with oat milk, maybe a touch of honey, and I make a 32 ounce. Now I only brew what's normally for an 8 to 12 ounce cup, but I stretch that out so it's not all at once. And plus I want to get a lot of fluids in me, so I'll usually enjoy that. Another thing I do drink is green matcha powder. Green matcha powder tea. There are things you want to be very mindful of. I'll have links in there for you guys to. I'll share what yerba mate I use. I'll share the matcha powder and so forth, and I'll even share the coffee that I drink. But just for reference points, if you guys want. But one of the things about the matcha is you want to make sure it's a first harvest, which means it's the first that they pulled from. Usually has the most nutrients. Okay, it has a different green color to it. It's like a limeish green, which you want to have. That means it's one of the first harvests. You want it to be ceremonial grade. Okay, the reason why ceremonial grade is more important is culinary doesn't have all the nutrient factors in there. It's more for like a coloring of something. I'm not saying there isn't any in there. Ceremonial is a lot more potent. It's a lot more designed to be drunk. You drink it like like a normal tea. And the other thing is you want to make sure it's organic and it comes from Japan, because other places like China, they're going to probably have a lot of heavy metals. We know for a fact that the green tea leaves they absorb heavy metals, and so you want to make sure that it is organic and the water is clean as possible, the land's clean as possible, and Japan is where it's really well known for that. Those are the kind of criteria I have when it comes to the green matcha powder. When it comes to if you're going to choose coffee, don't get any normal coffee. Coffee is one of the, and I think coffee is actually very beneficial. I think it's everything else added to it that makes it worse. And here's my reasoning why. Okay. I'm Italian. My culture is coffee, cigarettes, and carbs. Okay. Now, if you ask anyone who knows health, that's horrible for you. They still do cigarettes. They still do a ton. Well, our diet is carbs, and coffee is drinking all the time. I truly believe that it's not the coffee, it's everything they add to it. So if you don't get organic coffee, you are drinking it's the most pesticide rich stuff. And the reason why is because coffee is one of the most heavily sprayed out of all plants. And so you got all that stuff going on in there. Okay. Second is, how do they harvest it? How do they pull it? What's the elevation of its grown? Is it multiple blends? Is it single origin? I'm a big fan of single origin. I want to know where it comes from. Higher the elevation, the better. Third, do they dry hull it? Which means they take the berries out and they just let them sit in the sun and dry, and that's the end of it. Or do they wet hull it, which means they wash it. It's a little more expensive for this. Is why this type of processing is a little more expensive. But they'll wet it and they clean it and it gets all the debris off it. It supposedly helps with mycotoxins and all this stuff. And then they dry it out naturally. And then number 4, is it tested to have any mycotoxins? Coffee is known to have that. Now, some people say, well, the roasting process kills it all. Well, we know for a fact it doesn't. And so you want to make sure it's been tested and you want to have it verified. Some companies say they do test and it's 0, but they won't show the report to you. Some companies will. I'm a big fan of seeing the report. I want to know I have access to it. So that way I know that this lot batch that I'm having has no mycotoxins in it whatsoever. The other thing too, just to dive in, I know a lot about coffee. I will be doing a whole podcast episode on this and diving deep and all that. But another thing is, what kind of roast? Well, research shows a light roast and a dark roast, no good for it. It causes, I forgot, the light roast has, it's not enough, but then the dark roast is too much. A medium roast is really, really well. It's a nice blend of the two. I think it's for pH and nutrients. I apologize. Again, I didn't prepare for a coffee talk here. I'm just going off on this. So, but like I said, I will have an episode on this, and I'll go into everything I know about coffee to help you guys choose better quality coffee for you and your family. So these are the things you can do. Now, if you're like me, I get all that, but then I just choose decaf. Now, some people say decaf is horrible for you. Yes, it is. If you do not have decaf that is Swiss water extract, which is I'll explain what that is in a minute. What they use is chemicals to pull the caffeine off, which is horrible. Where's those chemicals go? Do they stay on the beans? Do they rinse them off? Have they tested to know that they're off? Who knows? But decaf coffee is horrible to drink unless it's Swiss water extract. The reason why is, what Swiss water extract means is they put the green beans, before they roast them, in water. They take green bean extract, which is basically just the caffeinated form of the oil. I don't know if it's the oil or that comes from the green coffee beans, and it's in that green coffee bean extract. And what they'll do is they'll put that in the water. And what that does is it actually pulls off the caffeine off the beans. So it kind of attracts it to pull. The water loosens up the caffeine and it pulls. This is why decaf coffee is not the strongest coffee flavor. It loses some of that. So it's the negative of having decaf, which it's very hard. I mean, the ones that I use, it's not as strong as a normal. Like if I go make a nice espresso, I can really taste the coffee there, the coffee flavor. When it comes to decaf, even with an espresso, it's just not fully there. Sometimes I have to do a double or a triple to get that flavor a little bit. But the beautiful thing is no chemicals, and it pulls it off naturally and in that process. And then they just do the whole process of drying the beans off and then roasting them and all that good stuff to go through that process. So that's the coffee in a nutshell. So shared coffee, I shared matcha tea, and I also shared my yerba mate, which I like to use. Those are kind of my 3 that I will drink. I have 2 a day of either a coffee, a yerba mate, or coffee and green matcha tea. They're both 32 ounces. That's why I know that I had 64 in total already, and then I can only have to drink another 3/4 of a gallon, give or take 3 liters more, and I'm good for the day. So these are the things that you can do. Now, like I said, look at the show notes, check them out, and so forth. We're going to also be getting into a few episodes coming up from here and from now, all about fasting. I'm a big component of fasting. I have I have my own ebook on there, healthbydrvic.com, that talks about the science on fasting. Check it out. It's free. Go ahead and grab that. We're going to be coming out with some cool gear in the near future also, so keep a lookout for that. But again, like I said, if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe so you never miss one. If you were inspired by this, please share a review. And if you really enjoyed it, share it with someone that you know can benefit, just one person. I appreciate you guys as always. And until next time, keep rocking and rolling.